You ever just look at a giant skyscraper or a really complex bridge and just wonder how? Seriously, how does something so incredibly intricate, with thousands of people and millions of parts, all come together without just falling into total chaos? Well, let's get into it. What's the secret sauce that keeps a modern marvel from turning into a massive, multi-million-dollar mistake? I mean, is it just one brilliant manager? Some kind of supercomputer running the show? What's the real magic here? The answer, and you might find this surprising, it's not a person. It's not some crazy new tech. It's paper. Or, the digital version of it these days. The whole project is actually built on a foundation of super carefully crafted, interconnected documents, long before a single shovel ever touches the dirt. Think of it this way. Every single construction project, whether it's huge or small, it runs on a kind of operating system. And that system has a name: the contract documents. This is what dictates every single move, from the very beginning to the very end. And that word collection is so important. This isn't just one big book of rules. Nope, it's more like a whole library of individual documents that are all designed to talk to each other, creating one complete rulebook for the game. Every piece has its part to play. So what's actually in this project toolbox? Well, you've got your main agreements, the conditions, all the nitty-gritty technical stuff in the specifications and drawings, and then, of course, all the official updates like addenda and change orders. We're going to unpack the most important of these right now. All right, let's start with the first set of tools. Before anyone can even think about ordering concrete or steel, you have to start out the human side of things. Who's responsible for what, who's paying for what, and who gets to make the big decisions. This stuff is the legal backbone of the entire project. The agreements and the conditions of the contract, they spell out exactly what the owner, the architect or engineer, who we'll just call the AE, and the contractor have to do. And even if a subcontractor never lays eyes on that main signed agreement, the rules from that document trickle all the way down and define your job too. And this quote from our source material absolutely nails a huge warning. It is so tempting to just skim past what looks like standard legal jargon, right? The boilerplate. But hidden in one of those paragraphs could be one tiny little clause that ends up being $1 million problem later on. Every single word matters. Okay, so we've established the rules of engagement. Now for the fun part. How do we actually tell people what to build? That's where we get into the technical blueprint for the whole thing. The easiest way to think about it is like a recipe. The drawings, they're the picture. They show you the shape, the size, where everything goes. They tell you what it's supposed to look like. The specifications, or specs, on the other hand, they're the ingredient list and the step-by-step instructions. They tell you to use a very specific grade of steel or a certain type of concrete. They define the quality, and you absolutely need both to get it right. Now, here's a super important detail that is so easy to miss. If the specs say something like, all concrete work must comply with ACI Standard 318, well, that entire separate document, ACI 308, just legally became part of the contract. The contractor is now on the hook for knowing and following every single rule in that standard, even if it's not physically stapled to the back of the packet. Look, as anybody who's ever built so much as a bookshelf knows, the plan almost never survives reality, right? Weather gets in the way, materials don't show up, clients change their minds. So the system has to be flexible enough to adapt. And it does adapt, for sure. But, and this is a big but, it's only through a very formal process. You can't just shoot someone a text or scribble a note on a drawing. Changes have to be issued as official addenda before the contract is signed or as change orders after. These then become legally binding updates to the whole blueprint. And this is why that whole formal process is such a massive deal. Working from an old set of drawings isn't just a small problem. It is a recipe for absolute disaster. It causes mistakes, it costs a ton of money to fix, and it leads to huge problems. The whole system is built on one simple idea. Everyone is working from the exact same, most up-to-date set of instructions. So we've seen all the pieces of this amazing system, the legal rules, the technical instructions, the way we handle changes, but all of it, and I mean all of it, depends on one single overarching principle. If you get this one thing wrong, the whole house of cards comes tumbling down. So when you have this complex web of paper and people, what is the number one cause of failure? Where does it all go wrong most of the time? That's it. 2 words. Incomplete sets. This is what happens when one person, one subcontractor, one supplier is working from a different set of documents than everybody else. It's like different sections of an orchestra reading from different sheet music. You don't get a symphony, you get pure chaos. The way to prevent this is, in theory, incredibly simple. The architect or engineer issues one single, complete master set. Then the general contractor is responsible for making sure that exact, complete set, every drawing, every spec, every single addendum gets into the hands of every single person who touches the project. It's all about the chain of custody for information. Let me give you a really clear example of why this is so critical. A structural drawing might have a little note that says, see specification section 051200 for bolt requirements. Well, if the person making the steel beams doesn't have that spec section, they might use the wrong bolts. It's a tiny mistake, all because of a missing piece of paper that could actually compromise the safety of the entire building. So, the next time you see a new building rising up into the sky, just remember, it's not only steel and glass. It is the physical version of a whole library of instructions that were all meticulously written, revised, and shared. It's a story that was told on paper long before it was ever told in concrete. So, what invisible instructions are holding up the world around you right now?